All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
And there's Mo Kelly.
And I am back. Thank you, Kim McAllister. It's the Mark Thompson Show. I'm Mo Kelly in for Mark on this Wednesday. And there's so much happening in the world today. And where better to talk about all of it than with you. We had multiple hearings on Capitol Hill. The war, I don't want to call it an excursion, not even an incursion, but the war continues in Iran at a cost of about $1 billion per day. And what are we getting out of it? That's what we're going to find out. That's what we're going to discuss. We have potentially a new DHS secretary, or at least on the horizon, and Mark Wayne Mullin. So much to get to. We have John Rothmann who's going to be joining us in about 15 minutes. In fact, he's in the queue, champing at the bit, I know, to sing the praises of the Democratic Party and give a rosier view, I think, than I would of Democratic prospects leading into the midterms. But before I get too far ahead of myself, let me start with Tulsi Gabbard and what I thought was a very enlightening I want to say cross-examination of what she has and has not been doing in her position as something with terrorism and something with voting, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But when she sat down and was questioned by John Ossoff, and I want you to listen to two things. And let me back up for a moment. Now, congressional hearings have their place, but we should not overestimate their value. It's not like if you perjure yourself during a congressional hearing, you're going to end up going to jail. But it does tell us, gives us some insight as far as the thinking of the administration. And one of the things which has not been made clear to you, to me, the American public more generally, is the reason for attacking Iran right now. And the word being thrown around was their attack, Iran's attack on us or our allies, was imminent, as in bound to happen in the near future. Watch Georgia Senator John Ossoff break down this idea of imminence with Tulsi Gabbard.
Was it the assessment of the intelligence community that there was an imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime?
The intelligence community assessed that Iran maintained the intention to rebuild and to continue to grow their nuclear enrichment capability.
Was it the assessment of the intelligence community that there was a, quote, imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime, yes or no?
Senator, the only person who can determine what is and is not an imminent threat is the president.
False. This is the worldwide threats hearing where you present to Congress national intelligence, timely, objective, and independent of political considerations. You've stated today that the intelligence community's assessment is that Iran's nuclear enrichment program was obliterated and that, quote, there had been no efforts since then to try to rebuild their enrichment capability. Was it the intelligence community's assessment that nevertheless, despite this obliteration, there was a, quote, imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime? Yes or no?
It is not the intelligence community's responsibility to determine what is and is not an imminent threat.
Okay.
That is up to the president
here's the problem.
Based on a volume
no,
of information
it is precisely
that he receives.
It is precisely your responsibility to determine what constitutes a threat to the United States. This is the worldwide threats hearing where, as you noted in your opening testimony, quote, you represent the IC's assessment of threats. You are here to represent the IC's assessment of threats.
And there you have it. Here's what we should take away from that clip. Have you noticed, or did you notice, that nowhere in there did Tulsi Gabbard say that it was the assessment of the intelligence community that Iran was bound to attack or was on the verge of an attack, that they had moved military assets, they have changed their positioning in some way, that their nuclear capabilities had been rebuilt, or there was some sort of overt action on the part of the Iranian regime which called into question our safety or the safety of our allies. None of that. And what we saw was she was deferring to the president, saying only the president can determine whether a threat is imminent. That's bull. That's not it at all. Now, the intelligence community can say with high confidence or varying levels of confidence as far as what may happen given their intelligence assessment. And the final decision, and that's a notable distinction, the final decision is with the president. But as far as the assessment of a threat, as far as the assessment of an imminent threat, that is completely and wholly within the confines and purview and the responsibilities of the DNI and the intelligence community, which says to you and me, pay attention, that the intelligence community did not endorse this, did not recommend this, and there is insufficient information or actionable intel to support an imminent threat from Iran. And this is more proof that this was just done at the whim, my word, of the president, his gut feeling. And as far as when the war is going to end, he'll feel it in his bones. This is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a war which is going to end and was begun purely on the gut instinct of a madman, possibly, probably, maybe dealing with cognitive decline and narcissistic personality disorder and all other cognitive/mental issues clouding his judgment. And that was just DNI Tulsi Gabbard. And she was correct to walk that line between telling the full truth and defending the president. And that kind of leads into my next remark about Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard had some reason to be in Georgia. And remember, this is Senator John Ossoff, Georgia Senator John Ossoff, who is questioning her, questioning why she was in Georgia, to do what exactly in Georgia regarding the ballot information and voter information that the FBI seized in relation to the supposed fraud of the 2020 presidential campaign and voting systems. Listen to why Tulsi Gabbard says she was in Georgia on that day of the raid.
It was a request from the president and his administration to go and help oversee this warrant being executed along with the deputy director of the FBI.
Is it your role to oversee
the FBI agents who were conducting
Is it
this
your
warrant?
role to oversee the execution of criminal warrants?
It is my role, based on statute that Congress has passed, to have oversight over election security, to include counterintelligence.
But you said you oversaw the raid, correct? You just testified you oversaw the raid?
Portions of it.
Okay. Did you handle any ballots or election-related materials?
No.
You were inside an FBI evidence truck, correct? You were photographed inside an FBI evidence truck.
It was an empty truck, yes.
The president stated, quote, you looked at votes that wanted to be checked out.
The
Is that
senator's
accurate?
time is expired.
Did you look at votes as the president
Senator
stated?
Ossoff, your time has expired.
You respond
You can
for the
have
record?
her. No, she cannot respond
No,
because
for the record, will the director please respond for the record to that question is my
I'm happy
question.
to respond to questions for the record.
Support journalism you trust.
The key
Support.
takeaway there is she was there at the direction of the president. That's key. That's really important, because when we look at these congressional hearings, sometimes we think that they're going to make a large difference. No, they're not, but they do give us insight. And they give us insight that the president's fingerprints are all over not only what is going on in Georgia, the manipulation of the FBI, also the war effort and the lack of intelligence which supported our going into Iran or our need to bomb Iran. And there's something else. Mark Wayne Mullen, the senator who is going to be replacing, ostensibly, most likely, replacing Kristi Noem as the Secretary of Homeland Security, DHS. Now, I don't know him personally. I don't know much about his senatorial voting record. I'm quite sure is in strict alignment with the president. Is he better than Kristi Noem? I guess maybe as a personality, he's less shrill, less strident, less over the top. But make no mistake, and this is what I want people to really understand. Changing the person at the head of the agency in the age of Trump doesn't really change much. He is still carrying out the issues and wishes of this president, going back to Tulsi Gabbard and the FBI in Georgia. So Mark Wayne Mullen may not be as over the top and ridiculous sounding as Kristi Noem, but you can best believe that he is going to employ the exact same agenda as set forth by this president as a function of ICE. Now, maybe ICE will be less adept to kill or less likely to kill an American citizen or two, maybe, possibly, but just know it's the exact same agency asking for more money. Just know that when I show you this clip with Mark Wayne Mullen and the question of his temperament and his problem-solving capabilities, whether you find him less or more agreeable or reprehensible is neither here nor there. He's still working at the behest of Donald Trump. And if Donald Trump has already put his seal of approval on him, and he has, know that ICE is not going to materially change in any way. This is Senator Rand Paul. And also something else, make note of the fact that the most pushback that we're going to see is usually going to come from the Republicans. That's interesting to know. Rand Paul here with Mark Wayne Mullen, and previously you had Senator Tom Tillis with Kristi Noem. This is Rand Paul.
Opinion that political disputes can sometimes and often only be resolved by violence?
No, I don't always agree with that. I don't believe in political violence. I've made that very clear. But sometimes people do need, theoretically speaking, sir, I get it. It's about character assassination for you. That's the way this game is played. I understand it. And you are making this about you, which is fine, but that doesn't keep me as Secretary of Homeland Security.
Character assassination when you were the one lauding the assault. Who do you think started that character assassination? I'm just repeating what you have done in character assassination. I'm repeating your support for the assault. So that's somehow something I started?
No, sir. What I'm saying is you're adding a lot to it.
In the days after the fight, you did many interviews in which you justified the violence as historically justified by precedents, such as caning and dueling. Is it today your opinion that the caning of Charles Sumner was not only justified, but argues still for resolving our political differences with violence?
What I was simply pointing out is some of the rules that still apply to this body. For instance, dueling with two consenting adults is still there. I was pointing out what is still
illegal for 170 years. There's no precedent for legal dueling. Even then, they fled the country. Do you realize that the man that beat Charles Sumner with a cane, he beat him till he was unconscious? You know why no senators intervened? Because his friend held a gun on the other senators, and he kept beating him until he crushed his skull. That's what you're insinuating is the precedent of the Senate, and that's what you live by. That is a very, very dangerous sentiment.
That's fine. Let's stop it there. You get the overall point that Mark Wayne Mullen is not well read, doesn't really understand the consequences of the statements that he'll make or the weight of the statements that he'll make on occasion. They're oftentimes inaccurate. But if you put him side by side next to Kristi Noem, he seems more reasonable. He seems like he would probably be a better choice. And we're getting ready to get into John Rothmann, who's waiting in the queue in just a moment. But I want to remind folks, it's serving the same administration, which has absolutely no concern for the rights of American citizens. And if you should think that there's going to be a material change in ICE because there is a change at the head of the agency, in this instance, you have not been paying attention.
The Mark Thompson Show.
This is Mark Thompson.
Our longest and most wondrous sponsor partner is in my cup right now. Ah, yes. It's the magic of Coachella Valley coffee. Now, this is not some discount roastery. This is a boutique roastery. This is all fresh product, fresh beans, hand roasted, all organically and ethically sourced from women-owned farms. They are so proud of the curation process that goes into all of their products. It's not just coffee. There's also amazing tea, great spices. Go to their website. Check it out. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Sample it. There are tasting profiles for all of their beans. They are truly wondrous. I was drinking their coffee before I had them as sponsors on the show, but I couldn't be happier. Ocotillo Espresso is one of my favorites, and you'll get all of the blending notes. You'll get all of the tasting profiles. Again, it's all there, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. When you check out, use our discount code MarkT for 10% off. And you know, once you decide on a bean that you really like, you may find it's more economical to order multiple pounds of it or to get into subscription, whatever it may be. However you do it, you get 10% off with our discount code MarkT. The Lion's Mane Clarity Blend, it is unreal. Coffee with the Lion's Mane added is what? It is spectacular. Order and enjoy.
Put that coffee down.
CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. When you check out, use our discount code MarkT, 10% off. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I got to say, each and every time that I do sit in for Mark, not only am I grateful for the opportunity, there are some aspects that I really look forward to. And one of those is looking forward to conversation with former KGO host and podcaster John Rothmann, who I may vehemently disagree with at times, but I cannot question his sincerity in the way that he makes his argument. And so let's welcome back into the show, the Mark Thompson Show, none other than the John Rothmann. John, it's great to see you once again. How are you doing today? How you doing?
Well, I like those modest introductions. Thank you.
Tell me, should the Democrats be celebrating today, given what is happening on Capitol Hill?
Well, it has nothing to do with the Democrats or celebrating. It has to do with what you just did in your opening. The idea of Mark Wayne Mullen being the successor to Kristi Noem is absurd. And all you had to do is listen to his testimony today to understand. The man is evasive, untruthful, and if he wants a lesson in what happened on that day in the United States Senate, when a man was caned, I'll be happy to inform him because I know about it. And as for the question of what this administration is doing and Tulsi Gabbard's testimony, disgraceful, horrific, unacceptable. And I must tell you bluntly, without any question, that this entire administration is corrupt from its inception to today. And the American people in November have no choice, in my judgment, but to sweep these bums out. And I believe that with all my heart. Whether the Democrats are right or wrong, what the Republicans are doing is absolutely criminal.
I get the sense, and I'm not a mind reader or a lip reader or a body language reader, but I do get the sense that in both instances, both Tulsi Gabbard and Mark Wayne Mullen, that they're not necessarily willing participants in this. I don't know that Tulsi Gabbard really wanted to be DNI. I don't know that Mark Wayne Mullen really wanted to be DHS secretary. And they're trying to walk this very thin tightrope of not perjuring themselves and have to deal with consequences after this administration is not in power.
Well, whether they want to or not. Look, let's be blunt. Their testimony is nonsense. And it makes no sense at all. And I must tell you that I believe that the problem is with Donald Trump. Who were they really talking to today? They weren't talking to you. They weren't talking to me. They weren't talking to the American people. They were talking to Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is a disgrace. And if you doubt it, let me point to his record. Look, we're involved in a war in Iran. It's not an incursion. It's not a little episode. This is a massive effort by Donald Trump at doing something which I have no idea what it is. Why? Because I was as threatened by Iran's nuclear capability, but according to Donald Trump, we obliterated it months ago. And what he is doing now is to justify something that is unjustifiable. And at the cost of $1 billion a day, and that's probably an underestimation, it's ridiculous. Now, the Israelis, by the way, have their own intent. And they are pursuing that, as you can see, with the decimation of the Iranian leadership. They have every right to do it. Iran has threatened the very survival of Israel. But this is something which we need to understand, and that is that the United States of America, under the leadership of Donald Trump, is doing things that are absolutely horrific in this world. And by the way, did you notice that the question of Cuba is now on the agenda? Look, let me be blunt. I'm no friend of the regime in Cuba. And by the way, the president's suggestion that maybe they be overthrown and that he send Marco Rubio, our Secretary of State and National Security Advisor, to run Cuba? Is he nuts? And that's the answer. He's nuts. So, we can talk politics, hard politics. It's fine with me. But the real reality is this country is teetering and tottering with a president who is thoroughly corrupt, who has no grasp of what he's doing, and who is creating more problems. May I point out to you, and I do it respectfully, that this president has insulted our NATO allies. The coalition which we built and which has survived longer than any major coalition of its kind. And we have a president of the United States who is dissing our allies, the British, the French, the Germans, and all the others. It's nothing less than a disgrace. And may I be blunt? This is all impeachable. This president should be impeached by the House and convicted by the Senate and removed from office. The only problem is you get J.D. Vance as president of the United States.
Let me jump in there.
An equal disgrace.
I think that there's something that we do agree upon, and there is some political hay that the Democrats can make here, if only because the distinction, and it's necessary to make it, the distinction has been made that this war is purely at the decision of Donald Trump, unsupported by intelligence assessments. This is his and his alone, and so the consequences of which may be political, economic, or what have you, legacy will be his and his alone. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And look what the Fed did just a few hours ago. They did not cut the interest rates because things are so dicey right now. Look, I don't know how to soft pedal this. I don't know how to sugarcoat it. We have a president of the United States who's out of control. And we have a Republican Party that won't stand up and say it. And they know it. That's the tragedy. They are aware of this. And they are afraid of Donald Trump, deathly afraid of Donald Trump, because what is the first job of every politician? To win the next election. By the way, you know who gained real points with me? Senator Ossoff of Georgia. And I would tell you he is a viable contender for the Democratic nomination for president in 2028, simply on his record. Can you imagine a ticket of Ossoff and Kelly, for instance? What a powerful indictment of Donald Trump and his administration. It is, well, I know you have other questions and my rambling on about my fury.
No, I love it, but I think we're going in the same direction. But sometimes because of the news today, what gets missed and overlooked is the news of yesterday. Somehow, some way, Jeffrey Epstein is not in the top 2 or 3 stories anymore, even though there are more revelations which are coming out. Does the Epstein files, do they still have a role in determining the future of this administration?
May I ask you, do you listen to my podcast? No. The answer is no. Because if you listened to my podcast, along with about 250,000 people in this country, you would know that I raised this morning, as I have raised repeatedly, the fact that the Epstein issue is a major issue. The fact that Donald Trump has not been forthcoming, that his administration has not released the information. And are you aware, and I'm sure you are because you're so well informed, that Pam Bondi has been summoned by Republicans in the House of Representatives to give testimony, because that's the other one who ought to be removed. What a disgrace that Pam Bondi is Attorney General of the United States. And the fact that the Epstein matter has been, well, I don't want to say it's been ignored, but I do want to say it has been overcome by events every single day, from Iran to Lebanon to Cuba to, well, you name it. And that's a tragedy too, because I do believe, and I say this bluntly, that one of the things Donald Trump wants to do is to make sure the Epstein files never see the light of day, at least anything relating to him. There is an accusation that he raped a 13-year-old girl, and that ought to be headlines, because frankly, whether it's true or not, it ought to be established what the truth is. And I understand that 13-year-old girl is now a mature woman, is ready to testify. And so let the testimony be given. Let history judge. But if you ask me about Donald Trump, I have absolutely no sympathy for him on any level in any way. And as for the Democrats, I hope they get their act together, and I think they will, because the country must have an alternative. And that alternative is the Democratic Party, which, by the way, I want to emphasize, the Democratic Party. Every time one of these Republican officials calls it the Democrat Party, I am enraged. That's not the name of the party. The incorporation papers are the Democratic Party. And that, by the way, should have been established. There was a debate on the floor of the Senate the other day, which I witnessed, in which Senator Thune, who is the Republican leader, kept calling it the Democrat Party. And I kept waiting for Chuck Schumer to stand up and say, wait a minute, at least call us what we are, the Democratic Party.
That's Chuck Schumer, and I have my misgivings with him. He's not going to be one to stand up. And I think there's an intra-party issue with regard to leadership, which is going to have to be addressed going forward if the Democrats are going to succeed. But
they'll succeed with or without, because people don't just vote for, they vote against.
No, my point is not pushing aside the Pam Bondi impending testimony. They can change, and this goes back to my original point during my open, as far as the congressional hearings, we should not overvalue or overestimate their significance. They're enlightening. There are things that we can glean from them. But Pam Bondi being forced to step down in the way that Kristi Noem was forced to step down or fired doesn't necessarily change the calculus or direction of this administration or this country.
Because the issue is Donald Trump.
Right.
The issue is what Trump wants and what Trump will do. And if one of his cabinet officials vanishes, he'll put somebody in who he wants, if the Republicans will approve it. And I'm very interested in this matter that we're going now with Mark Wayne Mullen, who is clearly unqualified to be in the position he's been nominated for. And we'll see what the Republicans do. I'm not a fan of Rand Paul. I think that Rand Paul, very often, I disagree with profoundly. But I thought this morning he was spot on.
Rand Paul, I may not agree with politically, but I don't have to question his sincerity. There are times that he may step out of alignment with other Republicans and go out on that plank by himself, and it's more than once. So I'm more of the opinion that he is more intellectually honest about these issues than other Republicans. I do get the sense, though, that he is not going to hold up the nomination of Mark Wayne Mullen, and it's going to go to the general floor vote, and he eventually will be confirmed. Do you agree, or do you think that there's a real possibility that Mark Wayne Mullen will not be confirmed?
They've just postponed the vote. It was supposed to take place tomorrow. It's not going to take place tomorrow. Clearly, there are doubts. And let me point out that I've always doubted Mark Wayne Mullen as a United States Senator. If you look at his record, it's absolutely appalling. But okay, will he be confirmed? Won't he be confirmed? The simple truth is, as long as Donald Trump is in the White House, these are the kinds of people he wants around him. And that, to me, is the indication of the problem. The problem is Donald Trump.
St. Patrick's Day recently passed us, and we saw what happened with the president when he had the Irish prime minister in the Oval Office. Listen to this, John.
Against Iran is illegal. The Irish president has said that your war against Iran is illegal. It's an attack on international law. But the Irish president.
Look, he's lucky I exist. That's all I can say. Because if you're going to allow countries that are sick and demented, and they are demented, to have nuclear weapons, everybody in the whole world should be very thankful. And I'm disappointed in NATO, very disappointed. I'm disappointed in a couple of other countries too. But they should be very thankful that this group of people feels the way we do. Because if a country like Iran was allowed to have the power of a nuclear weapon, we didn't stop them. I stopped them twice. I stopped them my first term when I terminated the Iran nuclear deal, which was Barack Obama's deal. It was one of maybe the worst deal I've ever seen. It gave everything to Iran, including billions of dollars in green cash. I don't mean cash, I mean green cash flown over by airplanes. I can't to this day believe that was allowed to happen. And come to think of it, it'll be a good thing for somebody to look at. Does the president have the power to hand hundreds of millions of dollars of cash to terrorists? But it began with that, and I terminated that deal. If I didn't terminate that deal, we might not be here right now. If I didn't terminate that deal, unbelievable nuclear holocaust would have taken place.
John, you get a general sense of the lunacy that he was trying to share. He was trying to, there was revisionist history going on. There were abject lies going on. He couldn't even get the gender of the Irish president, Catherine Connolly. I mean, what did you make of that exchange?
Look, this is an exchange where we have a president who speaks in a hyperbolic language. It's not true. Iran, if they were on the verge of a nuclear weapon, the Israelis would have prevented it from happening. You know it, and I know it. Why do you think they don't have a weapon? Because the Israelis prevented it. When Israel decided to hit Iran directly, then Donald Trump tagged along. It's fine that he tagged along. I'm glad to see that he understands the danger. But if you think that I trust Donald Trump on any level, I don't. And let me be clear that what we are witnessing now is a complete abuse of power. And I think that is what the American people are going to have to reckon with. We have vested in the President of the United States powers, but the founders intended there to be a check on that. Now, the fact that Donald Trump confused the gender of the president, who is a woman, all I can tell you is nothing surprises me. He gets a lot of this stuff wrong. And you've heard him repeatedly bumble things. But here's what people have to understand. He is the president of the United States. Who we elect as president matters. Now, the question you're going to ask is, why not employ the 25th Amendment? The 25th Amendment was adopted in 65 rather, in the aftermath of the Kennedy assassination. When the American people looked at Lyndon Johnson right after the assassination, they saw two old men sitting behind him, Carl Hayden, who had represented Arizona in the United States Senate or in the House of Representatives since Arizona was admitted as a state. And they witnessed John W. McCormick, who I had the pleasure of knowing, but who was already over the hill on his way out. And it seems to me that the idea behind the 25th Amendment was to replace a vice president. We did that. We've done it several times now. Certainly when Spiro Agnew resigned, we got Gerald Ford, and Gerald Ford then had Nelson Rockefeller. That was the idea. But what we were really aiming at, and if you go back and you read the hearings of that 25th Amendment, was the fear of a Woodrow Wilson who was paralyzed in the White House, paralyzed by a stroke from September of 1919 until his departure on March 4th of 1921. We didn't want to see a situation like that. But do you understand the technical aspect of it is that to remove a president of the United States, you have to have the vice president agree, and you have to have a majority of the cabinet agree. Well, that's never going to happen with Donald Trump. And I think that is the limitation of the 25th Amendment. But may I point out, nobody could have anticipated that we would ever elect a person like Donald Trump to the presidency of the United States. Now, this is not over by any stretch of the imagination. This is a president who is judging by his gut. This is a president of the United States who's talking about liberating Cuba, that he personally would do that. This is a president of the United States who, and you've cited many of these examples, when it comes to Iran, isn't doing it by logic or by intelligence. And so my concern, very honestly, is that in November, we have to have an election in which the Democrats win overwhelmingly. One of the things that will happen, you raised the Jeffrey Epstein matter. I'm going to be interested in what Pam Bondi does, but more than that, if this isn't resolved by the time of the election, the Democrats must win the House of Representatives in order to get these kinds of investigations going. Otherwise, the Republicans will block everything. And may I say a word about the Speaker of the House of Representatives? What a disgrace that he is the Speaker. And I'm looking forward to the days, not that I always agree with Hakeem Jeffries, I don't always agree with him, but I'll look forward to the day when we have a Democrat as Speaker of the House of Representatives. Do you understand the complete malfeasance in the dysfunction within the House? Because the Republicans are intimidated by Donald Trump. Now, My private sources in Washington tell me Republicans are just as concerned as Democrats. But when Donald Trump threatens to primary you, and remember, the first obligation of every elected official is to get reelected, they just back down. They lose it all.
John, there's something fundamentally missing in your assessment. When you refer to Donald Trump as a disgrace, or Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, as a disgrace, you are assuming that that has any value in our public discourse today. And I learned a long time ago, you cannot shame the shameless. You cannot appeal to a higher level of ethics or morality when the other side is not even engaging in that, does not value that, does not even recognize that. And to think that the House of Representatives is going to act in any way which is different than what Donald Trump acts is, I think it's like, it's almost like complaining about the broken windshield wipers on a car that doesn't run. It's a small symptom of a much larger problem.
And that's the case the Democrats have to make in November. They have to make it across this country, from one end of the country to the other, that the only way, aside from the Supreme Court, which did step in on the tariff question, that's the other thing I want to make. Let me finish the thought, and then let me go back to the Supreme Court for a moment. But it is very important to know that that's the case the Democrats have to make. If I were articulating the Democratic Party approach, it would be exactly the fact that what the Republicans have done is so inexcusable. But now let me point out that there's something else that happened. And that was Chief Justice John Roberts responding yesterday. I don't know if you have the clip, but John Roberts said that he and the court will not accept the idea that judges are attacked individually. Let me point out to you that is precisely what Donald Trump is doing. My friends, if that isn't an impeachable offense, I don't know what is. Can you imagine, could you ever contemplate that we would have a president of the United States who would attack sitting judges by name? Why? Because they don't vote the way he wants them. They don't rule the way he wants them.
But John, he does that because he knows that there are no consequences. John Roberts couldn't even figure out a way to say Donald Trump's name when he's the only person that this applies to. This is not a general problem. It's a specific one.
I disagree
John Roberts
profoundly.
in that moment could not say Donald Trump needs to stop putting justices and judges in the crosshairs of general society.
I disagree with you. He did say that. He didn't mention Trump's name because he is trying to make the point, but everybody knows, and it was made clear on all the news broadcasts, what he was talking about. But let me remind you that it was John Roberts who tipped the balance on the court on the question of the tariff ruling.
Yes.
There are other rulings coming up. And Mark Thompson disagrees with me repeatedly over my faith in the system. I understand the system fails, but I also understand that you can only push the system so far. I have absolute confidence that the American people will, in November, issue a rebuff to the Republicans. I have no doubt that the Supreme Court will issue that rebuff as well. Now, let me tell you the one problem we have. The one problem we have is that it is not the House, but the Senate who votes to confirm Supreme Court nominees. The president nominates, but the Supreme Court justice is approved by the Senate. And that is why it is equally important not only to take the House, but also to take the Senate. Because if you can imagine what would happen if several conservative members of the court who are older, and I'm speaking now of Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito, can you imagine if Donald Trump has the option to fill those vacancies, what it will mean to the Supreme Court? So I believe we need to concentrate as vigorously on the United States Senate as we can. These, I can't talk about it in a general sense. I can only talk about it in a very specific sense. I understand what the Constitution calls for. I understand what we have to do. And taking control of the Senate, taking control of the House is essential. We can't defang a president completely. Remember, the president, as he has demonstrated in this Iran situation, is the commander-in-chief. There doesn't have to be a declaration of war. We haven't had a declaration of war since December of 1941. All of these actions, Korea was a police action. Vietnam, the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, which was completely wrong. We only had 2 senators who voted against the Gulf of Tonkin resolution. Ernst Gruning of Alaska, who understood clearly, and Wayne Morris of Oregon, who understood completely. And Now we know that when you pass a resolution dealing with foreign policy, you've got to be very careful that a president can't assume responsibility. And why do you think it is that Donald Trump will not allow this to go before the Congress? He wouldn't win. Even the Republicans understand it.
I think Kim has the video of John Roberts for context in his.
Oh,
in his
please,
remarks.
please. Thank you, Kim.
In your 2024 year-end report on the judiciary, you wrote that criticism comes with the territory for judges and justices, and that it can be healthy. You've talked about the criticisms that your predecessors encountered. How do you handle criticism of your court or your opinions today?
Well, it does come with the territory. Often, when any of us issue an opinion, there's often a dissent. Usually not, but I mean, most opinions or more opinions than anything else are unanimous, and that's you get used to the criticism right away, and it can very much be healthy. We don't believe that we're flawless in any way, and it's important that our decisions are subjected to scrutiny, and they are. The problem sometimes is that the criticism can move from a focus on legal analysis to personalities. And you see from all over, I mean, not just any one political perspective on it, that it's more directed in a personal way, and that frankly can be actually quite dangerous. Judges around the country work very hard to get it right, and if they don't, their opinions are subject to criticism. But personally directed hostility is dangerous, and it's got to stop.
It's very much.
It's weird that John Roberts says it's got to stop, when I would say he was partially responsible for allowing it to foment, continue, and grow with his immunity ruling regarding Donald Trump.
I wouldn't disagree with you on that, but I can tell you, you now have the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court making the kind of statement that Kim has just allowed us to play. Thank you, Kim. And I want everybody to understand, there are a lot of mistakes that are made. There are a lot of defenses that are given. But when I find an example, I'm willing to raise it. And the American people have to understand it. Pure and simple. And I have to believe, maybe I'm wrong, that the institutions of this country need to be upheld. I want to remind you of something Adlai Stevenson said in the Godkin Lecture at Harvard University in 1954. Stevenson, twice the Democratic candidate for president, ambassador to the United Nations, formerly governor of Illinois. He said, America is not great because of its economic power or its military power. America is great because of its ideas. And he was talking about the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution of the United States, and the Bill of Rights. And that, to me, is what is the core of what we have to keep pursuing. And if I were the Democrats and I were outlining the strategy for the election of 2026, that would be my emphasis. Let me be clear. When I listen to Mark Levin or Sean Hannity, I suffer from low blood pressure, so I listen to them in order to have some stimulation. When I listen to them talk about the Constitution, I am horrified. Horrified because their interpretation is wrong. And I believe that with every fiber of my being. So what we have to do is make the case. And Democrats, Republicans, particularly Republicans who dissent, we have to make that case vigorously. And that is what we are doing on the Mark Thompson program. That is what I do on my podcast every day, Around the Political World with John Rothmann. And I think it is something our listeners have to be engaged with. By the way, I'm never discouraged. I'm an eternal optimist. I believe as long as there is any fight to be had, we should wage the fight. And by the way, I don't mind losing on occasion. I like winning better. And I believe that in the end, the American people will repudiate what Donald Trump has done. And I think the Republicans are going to pay a price. Remember when Herbert Hoover was president, he was blamed for the Depression, which he wasn't really responsible for. But for 20 years, the Republicans were unable to take control of the White House. And it took a national hero like Dwight Eisenhower to ultimately pilot them to victory. That's what's going to happen to the Republicans. I believe it. I have to believe it. I'm going to fight for it with every fiber of my being. And as long as I have a voice, I'm going to raise it in just this way. So anyway, that's it.
John Rothmann, I wish I had more time to go back and forth with you. I agree with you that there's going to be a price to be paid for this moment in America. The question is, how is it going to be paid, and by whom, and to what degree? But
you and I will make a date. We'll bump Mark in 5 years, and you and I will make a date. And hey, Mark, did you hear that? And we'll see where we go. But I want to tell you, Mo, it's a real pleasure to have the opportunity to be with you. I know that you and I generally agree, and I know that some people say, well, you've got to disagree in order to have some friction here. There's one thing you and I agree on. Donald Trump is a disgrace. And I would tell you, in terms of rating the presidents, this guy is the worst president in the history of our country.
Maybe true, but there's one thing I will say as we close here. You talk about Adlai Stevenson and the ideas of America is what makes the country great. No, the ideas are aspirational. And if we meet those ideals set forth in those ideas, then and only then will we be great. It's about whether this country can become as good as its promise.
With all due respect, it's not aspirational. It's in the Constitution. It's in the Bill of Rights.
But we have to live up to that. Okay. Right. Now we disagree. Now we disagree because because it's in the Bill of Rights, just because it's in the Declaration of Independence that all men are created equal, it still took other laws to free African Americans.
And that's my point. And that's why we vote. That's why we have elections. No, that's why we have elections. And if we win the election, it makes all the difference in the world. So I think we agree. It may be fun to say we disagree, but we don't. You and I know that if we're going to win this thing and the points we've made are going to work, then in November, the American people have to stand up. And I will tell you, I am looking forward to November, and I'm looking forward to the election in November of 2028. And, I have hope. Gotta have hope.
John, I got to run. Keep that hope, and we'll keep that hope, and we'll do this again sometime soon.
I hope so. Thank you very much.
And be well, John. Around the World, John Rothmann. Always love that.
The Mark Thompson Show.
This is Mark Thompson.
Rejoice, friends. I bring you word of Zellman's Minty Mouth. I know it's crazy. We road tested this product for a month before we brought them on the air, and now they are our sponsor partners. It is a fresh breath agent that is different than anything else. Here's how it works. You pop 2 or 3 in your mouth. I pop 3. You get this minty coating going in your mouth, so it gives you kind of a fresh blast in your mouth of sort of clean, clear breath. But the real action is in your gut.
What?
I know. It's down in your stomach. It interacts with the stuff in your stomach and neutralizes the things that cause bad breath. So powerful mint on the outside with these tiny capsules. You swallow the capsules. It's really, as I say, I pop 3 of them, swish them around, then I pop then I swallow the capsules. And this parsley seed oil. This is a natural agent that neutralizes the odors that can cause bad breath. No artificial sweeteners, no xylitol, no preservatives. It's just all stuff that works. Zellmans.com. If you're just listening and not watching, it's spelled Zelmins. Zellmans.com. Use our discount code when you order. Mark T at checkout. Zellmans.com. Mark T at checkout for 15% off Zellman's Minty Mouth.
I got to say, in all of my conversations, I will watch various news programs and I will read various media outlets, and I take it just an informal personal survey of what's being discussed and what's not being discussed, how certain issues are being discussed. And there's something that I always try to look for. I look for what is being omitted, what is being overlooked, or what is not necessarily being focused on that people, I believe, need to know or have more attention brought to. And when we talk about Iran, and yes, that is the most important issue right now in the world. It impacts so many countries as far as militarily, economically, legislatively, and so forth. But what is not being discussed, I would think, and needs to be discussed more, the long-term implications of what this war in Iran is going to mean. And what I mean by that is not enough attention has been paid to what this is going to do for America and our relationship, our deteriorating relationship with NATO, what that's going to mean with other conflicts around the world in the near term. We're talking about Iran, but if something should happen, like, for example, this is a hypothetical. If Russia should invade Poland, how does that impact America? Do we have the ability? Do we have the resources to get involved? Would NATO want us to be involved? If we were directly attacked by Iran or some other nation, does that mean that NATO will not come to our defense? Do they feel that the relationship has been damaged in such a way that they are not going to be the willing partners that they have been in recent years, or at least recently as far as 9/11, because of what Donald Trump has said about NATO, what Donald Trump has done to undermine NATO, to diminish the importance of NATO? On one hand, on one day, he goes to NATO to seek help and assistance in regard to the Strait of Hormuz. And then the very next day, after being told no by everyone, that's important, he was told no by everyone, and also told no very loudly, publicly, and assuredly that they would not take any part in this war of choice. That is very significant. That says that the partnership that we have enjoyed in past decades is not the same today. We don't necessarily know if NATO views America as the same partner. In fact, we do know that they do not view America as the same partner as it once was. And the implications of that can be staggering and long-term when you think about it. And that's not saying anything of the economic aspect. What we talked to John Rothmann, and he notated that the Fed did not drop interest rates. But let's also remember this. We can go back and forth about whether this war in Iran was imminent. There was a reason to do this now. But we can't argue whether the president has the power to truly end this war. And what I mean by that is he can cease military operations, military hostilities. He can withdraw our troops. He can pull back our resources. He can somehow impose more sanctions on Iran and just keep it on an economic level. But he cannot assuredly end the war and the economic implications in the way that we saw. And I know Kim has felt this where she is in California. I felt this here in Southern California. You in the chat, you felt this, and you can see this for yourself. We've seen the rise in gas. That impacts all of us. And when I say that, I'm saying even if you have an EV, the cost of crude oil and the processing of crude oil, which impacts all sorts of products all around us and in just about every way, are also increasing. That is going to be felt months, possibly even years after this conflict ends. In other words, the president can say today, and he won't, but he could say today that the war is over, mission accomplished, we won, we've diminished their capacity, we've obliterated all of their abilities, there are no more ballistic missiles that they can lob at us, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. He could say all of that today. He won't, but he could. But you will notice that the cost of gas will not come down. You will notice that the Fed is not necessarily going to drop interest rates. You will notice that there will be a hangover effect in the stock market and also other financial markets. This is something that the president cannot control, and I don't believe that there's been enough focus and discussion of the long-term implications beyond the military. When I filled up my hybrid car yesterday, yeah, it wasn't as much as if I had a purely gas conventional engine, but I still felt it. It went from $20 to just about $40. And I can imagine that for most Americans, that's something that they feel in ways that have nothing to do with politics, whether you support the president or not. And we're going to be dealing with this war long after the troops come home, hopefully not through dignified transfer. And that's just from where I'm sitting. Kim, talk to me about up north, what you're seeing, what you're feeling, what you're hearing.
I paid $73 yesterday for a half a tank of gas. I've got a Toyota Highlander, so it's a bigger gas guzzling vehicle. Not that bad, but I mean, it's not, I don't have the hybrid like you do, or the electric vehicle, but that's a lot. That's much more than I'm used to paying. I will say this. I was looking at a story yesterday about diesel prices rising above $5 a gallon. And for regular unleaded gas, I've seen it jump 20 cents overnight. It was, $5.49. Yesterday I rolled up and it was, almost $5.70 or $5.80. I was looking at a website for certain Southern California radio station, and they were blaming, the folks on this particular show were blaming gas prices on Gavin Newsom because gas taxes in California. And so I made a comment that I don't think in this case it's Gavin Newsom's fault. It seems to be Trump's fault for his Iran war. And they said, no, if that was the case, gas prices would be going up everywhere across America. And I said, they are. But but they don't see it. The MAGA people in California love to blame Gavin Newsom, and perhaps there is some just truth to that if you want to talk about whether or not you value the environment that we live in and whether gas taxes should be high in California. That's fine, but this is separate than that, and it is going on across America. And now we've got diesel prices over $5 a gallon as well, and that affects tractor trailers and the carrying of products from one place to another. And we saw that during the pandemic too, right? And that means prices will go up at the grocery store, at the department store. Whatever you're going to buy, it's going to cost more to ferry it from one place to another. And that's going to hurt Trump's economy even worse.
I always say I try to keep it simple for people, and you can always look at the strength of the economy through entertainment. In other words, if people have more disposable income, if they're going to the movies, if they're going on vacation, if they're going on trips, driving around the country, you will see that, and people will do that. If money becomes tight, then they won't do that. In other words, if entertainment suffers, you know that Americans are skittish about the economy and things are much more difficult for them in a financial sense. Mm-hmm. You're going to see that through airplane prices, cost of cruises, because all of those industries are I'll say directly related to the petroleum industry. And if it costs more, just strip it down. If it costs more for the plane to fly, that cost is going to be passed on to us. And we will be less likely to go on that trip. And it's cyclical and circular in that way, where even though the Iran war will be over at some point, it doesn't mean that our economy will not continue to feel the effects of it. And that, I don't think, has been given enough attention, because we will be feeling the effects of this war for months, maybe even close to a year or more after the war, because there's a part of this which is greed-based and price gouging based, where the price of gas is more speculative and is more forward-looking about what possibly may happen, and is fear-based, where you have a lot of these corporations, they'll jack up the price because of something which may happen. Not that we have dwindling reserves and we don't have enough petroleum products here. It's just that when something happens in the Middle East and something may affect the flow of crude oil, then this is a natural consequence of that. But on the flip side of that is, even though prices went up as far as crude oil immediately over the course of days, up $1 or more on average, it will take months, if not a year or more, for those prices to come down. Right. So we're going to have to deal with this long after the troops are called home. And there hasn't been enough discussion about that. And let me just say one thing about this ongoing argument. And for those in the chat, I want to remind people, especially if you're not in California, the gas tax predates Gavin Newsom. It was voted on by voters here in California in 2017. Gavin Newsom didn't even take office. Actually, he wasn't even elected until November of 2018 and didn't take office until after that. So when you have these arguments, and I like to stay in the land of facts, the cost of gas obviously is not directly related to any one politician. The president doesn't control gas prices, but if he starts a war, he damn sure can influence the cost of gas, disproportionately so. And as far as gas in California, if you're going around saying that Gavin Newsom is the reason why we have high gas prices, you're just full of it, you're a liar, and you don't embrace basic facts, because the gas tax predates him. It was voted on by voters. It wasn't a decision of the state legislature, and it wasn't a decision which was signed into law by Gavin Newsom. Just had to get that off my chest, Kim.
It's crazy. What's crazy to me, and here I have this, here's a headline from a Fox News-ish outlet. This is what they will try to say right now. They are trying to blame Governor Gavin Newsom for the rising cost of gas currently. I don't know how anybody could look at what's happening in the world and blame him for that. I mean, it's nonsensical.
Yeah, it's not based in reality on any level, And if you were to ask that person or even news outlet, what specific action did Gavin Newsom take to influence gas prices either now or even recently, they will say the gas tax. Invariably, they will say the gas tax, as if the governor by fiat can remove the gas tax when it preceded him and was not even endorsed actually by him, and it's not connected to him. And not only that, the gas tax is flat and constant. It's not like 3 weeks ago, there was another gas tax added on top of it to make our gas here in California even more expensive. No, it's been flat and consistent. Now, the only thing which has changed is the war in Iran.
Right. And so this is one of their speaking points. The GOP gubernatorial candidate here in California, Steve Hilton, jumping on this "it's Newsom's fault" bandwagon. I'm hoping California voters and or drivers will see through this. This is not Newsom's fault. This is something happening across America. Gas prices are not just high in California for a change. They're going up globally and nationally in every single state.
And I understand the reasoning behind this, why Fox News, among other outlets, would do it, if only because it's an acknowledgement that Gavin Newsom potentially is a front runner for the Democratic nomination. I say potentially because he's really the only name which is out there and kind of committed to putting himself on a national level. He's on this book tour. He's going around the country. He's sitting in with podcasters and influencers. He's developing his national profile. So there's a reference point for people on Fox News who hate all things California. California is an S-hole. It's a hellhole, and it's all because of the mismanagement of Gavin Newsom, his fraud, and the gas prices. I understand what is attempting to be done here, but unfortunately, most people, and I think this is inclusive of people on both sides of the political aisle, they don't necessarily go beyond the headlines. They'll read the headline, but not the article. They'll read the article, not necessarily research it for factual basis or underpinning. And so people will go with the shorthand. Oh yeah, the gas is high in California because of Gavin Newsom. He mismanaged California. He's not right for America. He would be a horrible president. That's the thinking. That's the through line.
Did you see the video of Trump the other day misspeaking, and he was trying to denigrate Governor Newsom because he has dyslexia, trying to call it some type of cognitive delay or some type of mental illness. It's dyslexia. It's a learning disability. And it doesn't mean that you can't succeed at doing anything and everything. But in doing so, Trump had his own cognitive moment, and he called Gavin Newsom the president of the United States.
Freudian slip. But it does tell you that he sees Gavin Newsom a threat to him and also a threat to the Republican Party. And you will see networks such as Fox News, Newsmax, honing their coverage in a negative sense about Gavin Newsom, whether he's connected to the story or not. Gavin Newsom has no connection to what's going on in Iran, none, but he'll be forced into the conversation. And speaking of conversations, look, you always know when I sit in for Mark Thompson, I'm a firm believer of making sure that you have at least some semblance of Mark in the show. I'm just keeping the seat warm for him. He'll be back tomorrow. But to that end, I want to play for you now his conversation with Ryan Clarkson, and then I'll hit you on the other side. I think we have it. Kim's working on it. Well, in the meantime, let me just say, make sure you go to getmarksmerch.com. Make sure you support our sponsors to the Mark Thompson Show, because supporting the sponsors, supporting the show, make sure that we can provide all of this great content and analysis and guests for you. And that's the whole point. The Mark Thompson Show, and I had talked to Mark when he had just started the Mark Thompson Show, and not only is this something that he had thought about for a long time, to see it grow in ways that I don't even think Mark thought it was going to grow is a testament to how you as
Privacy,
supporters.
we've talked about this on the show before.
Go ahead, Kim. All right, we're having some technical issues trying to get the interview played, but as I was saying,
I want to talk about something that really is critical, and it's about privacy. We've talked about this on the show before. We've talked to many on the cutting edge, but I want you to meet someone who's really in the fight in a big way, in the belly of the beast. Ryan Clarkson, managing partner of Clarkson Law Firm, lead litigator on this suit against Meta. Consumers who have the Meta glasses, the AI glasses, may be giving up tremendous amounts of privacy information, and they don't even know it, and they can't even opt out of it. Ryan Clarkson, welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mark. Happy to be here.
Ryan, set, if you would, the landscape for us. This is a court case involving, I think, what I'm saying, which is sort of a breach of a presumed privacy that we have as consumers.
That's right, Mark. So we filed a federal lawsuit in the Northern District of California. This is San Francisco, in Meta's backyard, in connection with this new technology product that they've released into the world. And they're called Meta AI smart glasses. And they look just like Ray-Bans or Oakleys. And in fact, they've partnered with those brands, but they're very different. These have cameras on the front of the glasses that allow the users to record the world around them as they move through it. They've got a microphone, there's a speaker that allows them to interact with it. And then embedded within each of these sets of glasses is their AI chatbot. So many of us think about, ChatGPT or Anthropic's Claude. Gemini is the one that Google has. Some of you interacting on Google now are probably interacting with Gemini. Llama is Meta's version of that. And it's embedded in these devices and it allows the user to essentially ask questions about the world around them as the video is captured. So that
sounds really cool, Ryan. What's the problem?
Yeah, here's the problem. The problem is that they grounded their advertising campaign in privacy. And the slogan they used, Mark, was designed for privacy, controlled by you. And it turns out that that's a complete farce, because there are a couple of old school, very respected Swedish magazines, Swedish newspapers called Svenska Dagbladet and Göteborgs-Posten. And they did some investigative journalism and they interviewed a couple of whistleblowers who came forward in Nairobi, Kenya, of all places. And these low-wage hourly workers were working as data trainers, training content from Meta fed to these data trainers. And guess what content they are training and viewing from in order to interact with? Everyone who uses these glasses, the video recording. So people in their most private moments, in their homes, undressing, using the toilet in their bathrooms. And these very brave, courageous individuals step forward, even though they're working under confidentiality and NDAs against this very powerful employer, this big tech behemoth in Meta, and said, there's something wrong about what we're seeing. This seems like an invasion of privacy, and of course it is.
I mean, this seems open and shut. I mean, you as a lawyer bringing this case, and you're bringing it on behalf of how many clients?
Yeah, so we are seeking class certification of all purchasers within the country. So we found 2 brave class representatives to step forward, a woman in New Jersey, a young man in California, to represent the class. We'll be expanding it. And if anybody out there is interested and have bought these glasses and want to, help champion a very important consumer protection issue, certainly reach out to our firm. We want to talk with you. But there've been 7 million of these products sold apparently in 2025 alone. So, it's many, many people we're talking about.
And in a situation like this, what possible high ground can Meta have?
Yeah, so it's exactly what you'd expect. They say read the fine print. And when I say fine print, I'm talking about terms of service and supplemental terms of service and their privacy policy. If you add it all together, it's like 24,000 words. It would take any reasonable person of reasonable intelligence hours and hours to get through. And it's like legal jargon. It's dense material. This isn't, Kerouac. This isn't, Agatha Christie sitting on the beach, enjoying it. It's a different thing entirely. Nobody reads it. And I don't think, it's all in the fine print is a viable defense. And I don't think it's one that they're going to ultimately prevail with.
Is it possible to opt out of your stuff getting streamed to Meta and being used in this way if you have the glasses?
Well, if you look at some of the press statements they've made since we filed our lawsuit last week, what they're saying is you can opt out and the video stays on device, and only if you upload that video will it be shared with other human beings, in this case halfway around the world, to strangers. The problem is these Meta AI smart glasses, their intended function is to be used as the AI version, right? To question the AI chatbot embedded within it. And apparently from their perspective, if you ask a question, hey, Meta, can you describe what it is I'm seeing here in my glasses? That means you've made the decision to upload your data to their system and thereby open it up for other human beings to read.
So implicit in the request and in the dynamic that you actually have wanted, which is that you're asking Meta to apply AI to whatever you're seeing or whatever, et cetera. Implicit in that is the understanding, but apparently it's buried in the verbiage that, you can use the stuff that I'm sending you.
Even that level of detail isn't buried in the verbiage. It's something way broader and much less specific. So even a consumer who is atypical, who actually read 24,000 words of legal jargon, still wouldn't understand that that's actually what's happening.
You've taken on big tech before, and man, they really seem to have lost their moorings if they ever had them. I always thought, as they started, in garages and in, these little mini workspaces, that there was some sense of a responsibility to the society. I mean, I've interacted with a few of them and they sort of seem like level-headed people. But as these industries grow and as these companies grow, it seems that they lose magnetic north, if they ever had it. I don't know. What's been your experience in suing these big tech firms? Are you optimistic about this case? And what's happened in Silicon Valley with so many of these companies?
Yeah, so I think you're probably right that, maybe early on, an idealistic young tech student decides to hang a shingle and drop out of Harvard or Stanford or whatever, and we've heard that story many times, and they're looking to build a technology product that's going to make the world a better place, and there's some benevolence behind it. But at the end of the day, as these companies grow and these tech products find market share, what we see happen time and time and time again is there's a corporate mandate here. And the corporate mandate is to deliver a return to corporate shareholders. It's all about a drive to profits, and eventually the interests of profits outweigh the interests of ordinary people. And so when we're talking about, the big 7 tech companies, for example, every one of them have AI products, and they've added trillions of dollars to their market cap over the past couple of years. And so you're talking about substantial amounts of money. And so am I hopeful and optimistic that we're going to be successful? Absolutely. And that's because this is a classic case of false advertising and privacy violations. The law was built for situations like this. And that is informing our approach, which is twofold. One, to stop the unfair business practice, and 2, to hit them where we know it will hurt them and force a change in corporate behavior, and that's in their pocketbooks.
I've said many times on this show that sadly, this is the only way that we get change, because just in the way that our society is set up, you need to sue with enough financial pain that it changes corporate behavior.
That's right. I mean, we live in a society, the American society is one of little regulation, right? It doesn't take too much for a business to bring a product to market. If you look at the European Union, it's a very different dynamic. It takes years to bring a product to market, right? But they don't really have a lawsuit or class action regime on the back end of that to police it. Here, we flip it. There's very little resistance for a company to bring a product to market, but we're all guinea pigs. And then you've got law and public interest lawyers like our lawyers having to try to hold them to account after the fact and rein them in. And that's what we're trying to do here.
The Anthropic lawsuit against the Pentagon, as long as I have you, and because you have such good knowledge and experience with technology and with the legal side of interaction with so many of these companies, here's a company that is was threatened by the Pentagon to give up their AI capabilities to the Pentagon in the way that the Pentagon wanted, to allow surveillance, to allow for weapons to be fired without human interaction, for the sort of unfettered AI world to be in the hands of the Pentagon. And they said no. And they pushed back on the threat. And then the Pentagon made good on the threat. They said, well, basically, we're going to drive you out of business. You're not going to be able to do any government work. We're going to effectively call you an outlaw company. Anthropic is suing now. And now I talk to you, Ryan, because you've had such experience in this area. How do you handicap all of this? How do you see this all going down?
Yeah, it's interesting. And I'll say good for Dario Amodei for drawing a bright line here. And
the head of Anthropic, yeah,
the head of Anthropic. It's their business, and they should be able to have some guardrails on how their business and their technology product is used. Nobody knows it as well as they do, and so they know its power, and they know how that power could be misused if the guardrails aren't adhered to, and so. We've got this struggle here. Listen, they're not the only game in town. I'm sure Sam Altman of OpenAI would love, and I think he's already expressed his desire to take the government's money and be their AI solution. Same thing with other big tech companies. So listen, I think it's going to be very interesting as we're on the sidelines watching all of this unfold. But this is an attempt by a company to at least have some guardrails attached to what they understand to be a wildly powerful and godlike technology.
Yeah, I'm smiling because in the wake of what we were just talking about, which was that, money seems to rule the day and these companies seem to kind of lose their way because of all the money involved. There's no bigger client than the U.S. government. And these guys actually pushed back on the U.S. government and said, no, it's not ready for prime time. We can't just let AI run weapons systems without human interaction. I mean, I thought it was, as you suggested, it was really laudable what they did.
Yeah, it's not often that we can, applaud good corporate citizenship and identify some corporation that is very powerful, appealing to their better angels. But this may be one of those instances, and so I'll clap my hands, along with the others who think it's a good thing.
So back to your case and the case against Meta for these glasses. Do you, as a lawyer, having been involved in these things and now involved in this, anticipate this will be a long process to see some kind of both settlement and change in policy, which is what you want? It's not just about the money for you guys. You want to try to see to it that the consumers are protected in some way. How long a process might that be?
It's a great question. I mean, these class action cases typically take some time, many years. And what's unfortunate is the wheels of justice do turn very slowly. And here we're turning them to try to bend this very fast, technology. You can't catch up with it because it's just moving too quickly. So we'll see. Part of filing a lawsuit is of course, we want to be successful and obtain injunctive relief, change in corporate behavior. There's a monetary component to this, right? Folks are entitled to at least a partial refund for overpaying for promises of features like privacy they didn't get. There are privacy violations here that entitle people to some monetary benefit. But there's another aspect of this as well, and that's about public awareness and consumer education. People don't even know they have the right to avail themselves of consumer protection law, and that's part of it. And it can lead to some public pressure, and if that's what ultimately causes Meta to change their behavior and be clear about their how they think of privacy here and change their advertising campaign, I think that's a great outcome as well.
Well, as I was saying, I mean, it takes a financial penalty in the system that we've set up to get corporate behavior to change. It's not even just about those who have been violated and will receive some kind of compensation for that violation, but the company has to get a bloody nose in order to actually change its behavior. And I mean, it's really tough work that you do and a big lift. If people want to contact you, maybe those who have actually purchased the glasses, et cetera, to be part of this class action, how can they do so?
Yeah, I'd encourage anyone who's purchased these glasses all over the country. We're expanding this case beyond, California and New Jersey in terms of class representatives. We want to hear from folks in all 50 states. So reach out to us at our website, clarksonlawfirm.com, and we'd be happy to talk to you.
And I'll have a link to clarksonlawfirm.com under this video. So, hey, Ryan, good luck. It's a righteous battle, and, you're battling a behemoth for sure. But it feels so open and shut, but I know these things never are. Good luck to you.
Thank you so much, Mark. Appreciate you.
Ryan Clarkson. Thanks, man.
The Mark Thompson Show.
That's weird. For some reason, you're muted, Mr. Kelly.
Oh, there we go. I have to push the button. I've long wondered about those Meta glasses and the unintended consequences and implications of lack of privacy. Now when I go out, I'm consciously looking for the possibility of someone engaging me with those glasses on and filming me without my knowledge or my permission. Now, legally, they could do it. Going back to the conversation, they can do it. You don't have a presumption of privacy when you're in public, but at least you would know if there's a phone in your face or there's a camera in your face. And to think that you may be having a semi-private moment with just one person, which may end up on the internet, on social media for everyone to see, that gives me pause. It's a new world out there.
Really have to trust the people that you're around, right?
Well, see, the thing is, you may not know. You may just be an unwitting participant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very interesting. Didn't they, when the cell phones kind of first arrived, I'm dating myself, they had to make the camera have a camera shutter sound because people were taking them into the changing rooms of gymnasiums and taking pictures, naked nudie pictures of people. So they made the sound so that people could at least know someone's taking a picture, right?
And I always assume with any new technological advance or different type of technology, it's going to be misused. It's going to be abused. People are going to be victimized because of it. That's just the way it goes with technology, and criminals will find a way to exploit people through it. And I don't believe that it's any different with these meta glasses. And I don't want to say it's just meta. There are other types of viewing devices and recording devices which are out there, but now they are so inconspicuous, you can be taken advantage of, and you may not even know it until well after it's been posted on the internet, and what you thought was just a conversation between you and maybe one other person is now being broadcast for everyone else. And that's something that our society is going to have to grapple with. And obviously we don't have a legal distinction or protection as of yet, but there has to be some sort of societal discussion about it.
Maybe if we act like we're on candid camera from the moment we step out of our house until the moment we step back in, people will be better behaved. If they think they're constantly being recorded.
No, you've taken a page out of my life. I always assume that when I'm in public, there is a camera on me, be it a traffic cam, a business security cam. And now we have to figure into it these glasses and other GoPros. I mean, you know, they're dash cams. There are all sorts of cameras out there filming everything that we do. And my assumption is I'm on somebody's camera. Not that I need to worry about what I'm doing, but I still need to be cognizant that this is going to turn up somewhere else, possibly at some later date, whether I intend for it or not. So yeah. I mean, Kim, I just assume that whatever I do when I'm in the public eye or in the public view, walking down the street, at a movie theater, someone, I used to say someone's always watching. In other words, someone is always aware of what you're doing. Now I have to amend that to say someone is most likely recording it, whether you want it to be or not.
Yeah, you better be looking good out there, Mo Kelly.
I'm going to try.
No slip ups, my friend. Lynn Shamshoyan. Lynn Shamshoyan. It's a rich tradition to mispronounce Lynn Shamshoyan's name with a $5 contribution and a super sticker. And she was first to the punch this morning. Thank you, Lynn, for contributing to the show. Wonderful thing that you've done there. Pamela Kirby with a $10 super chat and says 100% John and Mo. Loving that. Thank you, Pamela Kirby, for the contribution. And Dan Silva coming in with a $5 contribution as well. And not to be overshadowed, Delamater walks in with a couple, says, Mo, someday will you tell us the KFI and you story?
Yeah, there's really not much to tell. I mean, I could tell it right now if you want, Richard. Kim, do you want me to tell the story?
Why not?
Okay. I had been with KFI since 2011. So I'd been there about 13 years. And when I started my daily show back in January of 2023, it was rolled out in a way, it's called Later with Mo Kelly. It was rolled out in a way in which it was very clear that the station wasn't necessarily going to embrace it. They had the host, and I want to try to keep people's names out of this, but the host before me on the schedule just kind of acknowledged, yeah, there's going to be a change in schedule. It's going to be this, that, and the other. And oh, by the way, Mo Kelly's going to be in this slot from 7 to 10. Like you presented me on the lid of a trash can. And so there was always this uphill battle as far as making the audience open to the idea of a change in shows. Prior to then, they had 4 shows and they're all 4 hours. And then he went back to the 3-hour format. which was the way it's supposed to be done, because 4 hours with any one show, you're crossing day parts and you're almost recycling material. 4 hours is a long time to be on air. So they went back to the 3-hour show format. And if you watch KFI, and I have no problem saying this because I said this on the air and I said it on social media, from January 2023 until when I left in October of 2025, you would be hard pressed to find anything that I did in the KFI socials. Like if you went to the KFI Instagram page, you went to the KFI Facebook page, you'd be hard pressed to find me anywhere. You would not find me on the KFI website. You had to dig and dig and dig, even though I was part of the daily lineup.
So you don't feel like you were properly promoted?
I was not promoted. I'm not even properly. There was no promotion at all. There was not any remotes that we did. There was never any money for T-shirts. There was nothing to promote the show other than what I did, going on other people's shows and promoting what I did. Like I had a talk with Bill Handel every, I think it was like every Thursday morning or something like that. But there was no promotion of the show. And for listeners, it made it very clear that, oh, well, maybe Mo's show is not really part of KFI. KFI doesn't even want to promote them because you didn't find me on social media. You didn't find me on the website. You didn't find me out on the road as far as doing remotes. There was no swag for the show. That was an ongoing fight from 2023, 24, and 25 on October. And then I had a meeting with station management in September. It was around September 11th. And I said, hey, all these issues are going on. You're not promoting the show. And we also had a change in station management back in 2024. So I'm talking to the new regime, if you will. And I said, hey, I'm not here. I'm not there. I don't think the station's doing this, is not doing that. Like, for example, I would talk about cruises all the time. Love to go on cruises. And yet there were other hosts that they're doing promotions with cruises. Like, why would you do that? I mean, I'm the one who talks about cruises more than anyone. Right. And they weren't making any effort. And they said, well, and I also asked about my contract. It's like, well, what's the deal with my contract? Are you renewing me or not? Just let me know. That's September of 2025. And the program director said, well, we really don't know, Mo. Let me run upstairs. And I'm quoting him now. Let me find out for you. And then on October 7th of 2025, the assistant program director texted me and said, Mo, we need to just have a quick conversation with you. Can you get on the phone? Station management wants to talk to you. I said, no, I was doing something for Spectrum News at that point. It's like 8 a.m. I said, well, and I knew it's like, oh, okay, you're playing games. So I said, if you're just going to let me go, whatever, if this is just going to be a blindside, just let me know now and save everyone the trouble, because there's no need to go through this production. He said, no, it's fine. We just need to talk to you about a couple things. So they lied about that. And so I said, well, I can talk to you later in the day after I finish with Spectrum. So knowing good and well, I got some things together because I'm at home. So I think I talked to him around 3 p.m, and it was the program director, the market program director for all the stations, and the assistant program director, leaving names out of it. It was about a 2-minute conversation. And they said, Mo, thank you for your time here. We just want to let you go. We're going to move in another direction, not acknowledging any of my concerns or any problems I had up until that point, not acknowledging that I asked them about the future. So you would not blindside me. Just let me know. And then we just go our separate ways. It was very disrespectful how it was done. It was very dishonest how it was done. And like all people, they said, well, you don't have to come into the office today. Is there anything you still have at the office? Because we want to save you the drive. Like they were doing me an effing favor by not driving in. And so, and I've been nothing but gracious publicly. I didn't like how it was done, but it's their station and how they want to do it. I never felt welcome. I never felt actually embraced by the station in any way, but that didn't lessen my commitment to what I was doing, because it's still a reflection of me, and everything that I do, I put everything into. God bless KFI. God bless the station. Whatever they do has nothing to do with me. It's not like they could actually remove my presence from the website because I wasn't there. It wasn't like they had to remove me from social media because I wasn't there as far as the station presentation. So long story short, that's what happened. I am still in contact and have great affinity for some people who work there.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some people I'll never speak to again. And I would say as much if they were encountering me. It's like, keep on walking. We have nothing to discuss because they are not my friends and I don't consider them to be honest individuals. And you can say what you want about me and say, Mo, I didn't necessarily like your show. You never had to question my sincerity. You never had to question my integrity. And you never could genuinely question my commitment to what I was doing. And, God bless them, whatever happens to them, whatever. And people always report back to me what's going on with the station. It's like, it has nothing to do with it.
It's enough. You know, it's interesting because, it's radio and we all have our horrible radio stories to tell. But the one thing I'm grateful for is that ending of your relationship with KFI led you here to the Mark Thompson Show, where I got to know you, and people in the chat and the audience are getting to know you as well, and really looking forward to you starting your own podcast as well as your fill-in days here on the Mark Thompson Show.
And I appreciate you, Kim. I appreciate Mark and Tony, who I worked with for many years at KFI, and I truly love you. And I said this when I left KFI, all jobs end. And I am a firm believer you haven't worked in radio until you've lost a job in radio. I've lost maybe 4 or 5 in radio off the top of my head, no exaggeration.
Well, it's crazy because usually when you get fired, like not just laid off, but fired, that it's a reflection on you or your work, or like, we're conditioned to believe when you get fired, it's you've done something. But in radio, that's just not the case. Like people get fired right and left, and that's just the nature of the industry, right? And so it's an ego bruise and it hurts, and yet there it is.
You said it perfectly, because when I usually recount this story, I'd say, if I take my ego out of it, I didn't necessarily need to be there any longer. The relationship had run its course.
Right.
The station had made it very clear that they were not going to support me. They did not believe in me. And the direction they wanted to take the station did not include me.
Yep.
And given what I was dealing with on a day-to-day basis, even though I love what I did, and there's a compartmentalization, I love what I did, don't get me wrong. But it was never going to be what I wanted it to be when you have a place which does not believe in you and does not want you. And I always liken life to relationships, be it dating or whatever. Call it a marriage, or you're just dating a significant other. If one person doesn't want to be in the relationship, it will never be fulfilling. It will never be something which is healthy for both parties.
And so for the other person, why would you ever want to be somewhere where you're not wanted? I wouldn't. Right.
And, and KFI, I thank them for the opportunity that it gave me, the experiences that I gained from it. Not everyone I love. I was not friends with everyone there, just like any workplace, they're coworkers, they're colleagues. They're not friends. They're not being invited for dinner. And the people I want to stay in touch with, I stay in touch with. And if you listen to the station, they've made a very conscious choice and editorial decision to move the station further in a certain direction, in a political sense, in a programming sense, and all those things. It's very clear. And if I didn't fit then, I'm definitely not going to fit now. And also there's the evolution of the medium. AM radio is not the future.
No.
It's not. It's early 20th century technology.
There's
iHeart, and yes, there's a streaming component to it, but I'm a firm believer, don't try to hold on to things which aren't worth holding on to. KFI didn't define me. KFI didn't create me.
Nope.
So they don't end me either.
I got my hair cut yesterday, and I was talking to the lovely woman who was cutting my hair, and she was talking about where she gets her news. And she said, I don't watch TV news anymore, and I don't listen to the radio. I get my news from podcasts on YouTube. And I said, really? Let me tell you about the Mark Thompson Show. Right?
Absolutely.
But yeah, that's the new way people are doing it. So, be with us, Mo Kelly. Be with us on YouTube. Get your own show up and running, and then come back as much as you can. Love having you on Fridays here on the Mark Thompson Show regularly.
And I love being here. And it's not about people liking me or even agreeing with me. It's about respecting what I do. That means more than anything. And if you visit me on Facebook at Mr. Mo Kelly, and I tell people all the time, look, I love to engage with people and I love to debate issues and talk about the news. Just leave out the insults and the ad hominems. That's it. That's it. And I know that's hard to do in the world of social media because people get comfortable saying whatever they want to whomever they want because social media provides access to just about anyone they want. But, I still come from a very specific and strict upbringing as far as how you carry yourself, comport yourself, handle yourself. I'm the kid who grew up where my father said, this is the side that you walk with a woman on the street. This is what you do when a woman comes into the room. You stand up. You do not wear a hat indoors. I'm being very serious. I had a very, very formal and strict upbringing. I'm from the generation of children who were seen and not heard. You didn't involve yourself in the conversations of adults. So there was a strict upbringing, and I have a code in which I live and I interact with other people. Don't say anything to me that you wouldn't say in person. Don't think that because I'm on YouTube or even on a radio show that means that I'm entitled to a certain level of abuse. No. You wouldn't do that in person, hopefully. You wouldn't do that in person, so I would not want you to do that via social media in the comment section. Why? Because I don't do that to you, because I respect you enough for that. Snark, all for it. All for it. Be a smart ass. But let's not lose our humanity in the process. And I think that's a larger, that's the micro, but the macro is, you can see how that's permeated our political discourse and how our president even acts, where he just has no respect for anything or anyone, even the people who like him. He doesn't respect them. So, but I can go on and on, but that's in short.
There it is.
Story.
Citizen Morgan throwing in 10. I just had to show my appreciation for y'all. It says, thank you so much.
Morgan. Thank you.
Lala with a $10 super chat. Thank you to Lala. This show only happens because of your contributions and your participation. So just very grateful to see that people are supporting the show. And Glenn B with a couple Australian bucks says, no reason, just wanted to contribute. You never need a reason. So thank you for that. Mo, we did it without Tony. We did it without Mark. We did it without Albert. And here we are coming to the end of the road.
Until tomorrow.
There's one thing that would make this show better, and that's cupcakes. Did you get your cupcakes?
Yes, I did. And my wife and I, look, 106 Bakery, let me just put it like this. There was what I was told, and it doesn't really convey how good they are until you have them. And it's not even really a cupcake. It's more like a cake in a cup.
Yep.
And their assortment of flavors. My wife and I, we shared double vanilla last night. We're going to do a different flavor tonight. I don't know, but it is heavenly, and it is not so sweet that it's off-putting. It's hard to describe.
So good.
It was just one of those treats where, yes, I could do this every night and get in trouble.
Big trouble. Here's more on sweet106bakery.com.
The Mark Thompson Show.
This is Mark Thompson.
Few things are filled with deliciousness the way that Sweet 106 Bakery has filled deliciousness in these canisters. You see them right now on the screen. These containers are filled with deliciousness. Now, Christy has won Cupcake Wars twice, so this isn't just some fly-by-night operation. She's the real thing. A female entrepreneur has created a business that is filled with a product that you will not be able to stop eating. It's incredible. Sweet106bakery.com is where you can find the full list of magnificence. There is every flavor, the double vanilla, the Dubai chocolate. I mean, the wondrousness, the rainbow. I mean, look at that. It is creamy, it is perfect, it is moist, and it arrives to your door. These are small batch baked items so that when you order, they bake it for you, and then it goes out. You can also order baking mixes. You can see all kinds of things on their website. And whatever you order, the layered cupcakes are my personal favorite. Whatever you order, you get 15% off by using our discount code MARKT.
What?
Suite 106 Bakery, I know. It's like a suite of rooms, SUITE, if you're just listening. Suite106bakery.com. The discount code is MARKT. Once you start eating, you won't be able to stop. MARKT for 15% off at checkout. Suite106bakery.com.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It's been fun. It's been enlightening. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with John Rothmann. I hope you've enjoyed the subjects that we've covered. Hope you enjoyed also the conversation between Mark and Ryan Clarkson. As we talked about the ideas of privacy and how technology will redefine what we think of as privacy and where our rights begin and end. But that's the end of our show for today. Mark will be back tomorrow. Kim will be back tomorrow. Kim, who will be back? Will Tony or Albert be back tomorrow?
It'll be Albert will be here, and David Katz, former federal prosecutor, will be here, and Mark will be back in the big chair.
So that's tomorrow. And like you, I'll be watching, I'll be listening and supporting. So from all of us at the Mark Thompson Show, thank you for what you do. Thank you for your support. And we'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks, Mo.